Hello, this is Mark from My Keys to Music. Thanks for joining me on this video. If you own a Nord Wave 2 or you're thinking seriously about purchasing one, then this particular announcement might be of interest. I'm going to have a course called Master the Nord Wave 2 available at mykeystomusic.com by the end of 2020. This particular video is an excerpt, a free preview, if you will, of that course coming up. Along with the course, you'll have the option of downloading this particular sample for use on your own keyboard. And additionally, I have a lot of people already enrolled in the Master the Nord Stage 3 course. So if you're already a member of that and you subscribe to that course, the good news is I have this sound available for you today in that course. It's called the Electric Guitar Discovery video. All right, so here it is, a free preview of a course that's coming out at the end of 2020, Master the Nord Wave 2. Enjoy. Okay, let's set up this electric guitar sound. Today's focus is something from a movie called Gun Anthem. It's actually from the original Top Gun movie, the sound and the guitar sound that you're about to hear. But since Maveric is coming out, which is sort of a reprise of that old movie, I thought it would be kind of appropriate to do this at this time. So you already know by now how to split your Wave 2, so I won't go through the mechanics of that, but what I will show you is what's on each layer so you can get an idea of how I've set this up. Now what I did to do the accompaniment you're about to hear is I grabbed a MIDI file, I actually purchased a MIDI file from the Top Gun Anthem theme, put that into Logic Pro X, changed the transposition because it was in the wrong key on each track, and then I'm playing it back, and what you hear is everything is coming from Logic Pro X except the bell and the electric guitar. But everything else, the drums and all the accompaniment, comes from Logic Pro X, and that's how I'm accompanying this particular piece, this discovery video. So on layer A, we have the Bell Tower Geffel sample. It sounds like that. Now the original sample has more filter cutoff. This is what it sounds like originally. It's much more bright and vibrant, but that's not how it's portrayed on the original piece of music, I mean. So I put some filtering on there and subdued that a lot. And then I've got a long release so that I don't have to hold it while playing, because holding a note while playing is more work for you to do. So I just put a long release on there. That's what that sounds like and looks like. And that splits over here on F2, and that's over here on layer A. Now layer B is the first part of the electric guitar, and it sounds like this. And it is a sample that I grabbed from the Nord user forums and put in the Wave 2 and added a bunch of effects. And I've also layered it with layer C, which you'll see here in a second. Some notable things about that is that it does have the full drive on 1, 2, 3. It does have a little bit of frequency, amp velocity rather, so that the harder I push, it is going to be a little bit louder. Another interesting aspect to this particular layer is that I have the ring modulation effect on at a very high rate and a very low amount. The rate on that, just for curiosity's sake, is 10. Yeah, so it's all the way up. But the amount is very low, but when I push the aftertouch, I'm morphing it to increase the amount ever so slightly so that when I push and hold the note, it brings in the ring modulation, which kind of gives you fake distortion. Hear that? Ever so slightly. So it gives you another option when you're performing it. I only have that on layer B, that particular effect. Then I have a delay, which you can hear. And then I have some reverb. And all of that comes together to produce that sound. Now I'll solo layer C, which is sort of the sidekick to layer B. And the only reason I introduce C at all is to give the sound a little bit more depth, a little bit more power. But incidentally, what you'll hear here in a second is the same sample, but this time the filtering is a little different and it's a little bit further in the distance. So sort of a sidekick rather than the main star, but together they work in tandem, bringing you a little bit more body to it. Also, something interesting that I did here is I brought it down -1 cent to make it just ever so slightly different tuning than layer B. So the two of them come together. All right. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the modulation wheel. I've got that morphing on layer B to bring out the distortion, or I should say the drive, which ends up being distortion, over here in the effects section in the EQ. And that one is interesting because I have a persistent drive already at 2.7. So this knob is already hanging out at 2.7 full time to make the sound. When I introduce the wheel, if I push monitor and then wheel and then toggle the knob, it shows me that the wheel goes to about 6.1, up to 6.1. So 2.7 to 6.1 as I move the wheel from 0 to 100. You can also go full drive, which gives you a whole nother effect, but I decided that the wheel, I didn't want it to be too out of control, so I'm only going to 6 there. Now the pitch stick, I wanted to show you a few techniques when it comes to the pitch stick that'll come in handy for your electric guitar work. First, you obviously have, the wiggle. So I put my index finger here most of the time, and then I support it with my middle finger. And the reason I have this position is so that I can use the thumb for the modulation wheel. So I don't really have to move my hand. There's not a lot of carpal tunnel movement here. It's just very easy. And I like that because then I can still use my thumb to hit any low notes or anything that I want to hold. So that's the technique I use there. But so that's one technique, is the wiggle. The other technique is, you'll hear me do this. Wiggle, and then a down. And then let go as you keep holding this. That's another technique. Now the other technique is the bend. And there's 2 or 3 different ways to do the bend. You can play a note and then bend it up and down. It's 2 semitones. And I think a lot of people do that. Then the other technique is you could have it bent first before you actually push the note. Or you can do both at the same time, which I try to do, which I think sounds even more realistic than either of the other two. Can I get a wow? And then finally, you'll hear me do something like this. The slow and long slide down. Now, in order to get the pitch stick to behave this way, you need to go into the pitch stick settings and actually set it to a +2 or -12, which would use this knob here. That means it's going to go up as high as 2 semitones when you move it to the right, which is indicative of how a guitar string would normally be bent, and then all the way down to a -12 semitones, which would be indicative of a whammy bar pushing and holding that whammy bar down, making those strings longer up to an octave down. So all of that in combination allows you to better imitate the electric guitar. And those are my tips specifically for this song, so enjoy the performance.
Your instructor is one of the finest pilots this program has ever produced. His exploits are legendary. What he has to teach you may very well mean the difference between life and death.
reputation precedes you.
I have to admit, I wasn't expecting an invitation back.
They called orders, Maveric.
Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking. Today's exercise is dogfighting.
Two versus one? Hey, he's got to be kidding.